Welcome to the Unveiled Epikekos channel. Today, we're diving deep into an unexplored historical mystery. Imagine a man born under the distant sun of ancient Spain, whose life would weave through the glittering yet treacherous halls of Roman power. A philosopher who preached the mastery of the soul while grappling with the intoxicating pull of wealth and influence, whose words on virtue and the brevity of life would echo across centuries, even as his own days ended in a calm acceptance of fate's unyielding decree. This is the hidden story of Seneca, a figure shrouded in the mists of imperial intrigue, whose inner battles between Stoic ideals and the realities of court life reveal forgotten truths about the human spirit in the face of tyranny and temptation. Let us journey back to the dusty streets of Inn, around the year 4 before the Common Era, where a child named Seneca entered the world as the second son of a prominent rhetorician known as Seneca the Elder, a man whose sharp tongue and writings on oratory would shape the boy's early years, and his mother, a woman of intellect and quiet strength. In a family of equestrian status, young Seneca grew amid the olive groves and Roman influences of the province, but whispers of greater destinies called him early to the eternal city, carried perhaps in the arms of his aunt as a small boy of 5, to the bustling heart of Rome where his father pursued ambition. There in the shadow of the Forum, Seneca received the rigorous education of a Roman elite, mastering grammar, literature, and rhetoric under stern teachers. Yet even then his fragile health shadowed him, breathing difficulties that plagued him like a persistent specter, perhaps asthma that left him frail and contemplative, turning his gaze inward toward philosophy as a refuge from the body's betrayals. As a young man in his 20s, he delved deeper into Stoic teachings under mentors like, and briefly embracing vegetarianism until his father urged him away from practices seen as foreign rites. But the seeds were planted. Ideas of living in harmony with nature, controlling the passions, and finding virtue as the sole good yet fate, that Stoic force beyond our grasp, soon intervened, his health worsening. Seneca traveled to Egypt around his mid-20s, staying with his aunt whose husband served as prefect there, under the warm Nile sun and amid ancient wonders. He sought recovery in the drier air and healing waters, observing the rhythms of the river and the mysteries of a land steeped in timeless wisdom. A lesser-known interlude where he pondered the vastness of nature and the smallness of human concerns, returning to Rome renewed in body if not entirely in spirit. Around the year 31 of the Common Era, Seneca plunged into public life, his oratorical skills blooming like a rare flower in the Senate, earning him the quaestorship and a rising reputation as a voice of eloquence. But eloquence drew envy, particularly from the erratic Emperor Caligula, who in a fit of jealousy over Seneca's brilliant speeches nearly ordered his execution, spared only by reports of his lingering illness, that he would soon die naturally anyway, a hidden mercy in the madman's court, where whispers of plots and sudden deaths were everyday shadows. Under Caligula's successor Claudius, Seneca's star seemed to ascend further, yet intrigue struck again, accused perhaps falsely of adultery with Julia, Caligula's sister. He faced exile in 41 to the rugged island of Corsica, a barren place of cliffs and isolation that tested his stoic resolve. There for 8 long years, separated from family and fortune, he turned inward, writing consolations to his mother, reminding her and himself that exile is merely a change of place, that the mind remains free wherever the body is confined, and studying natural phenomena, pondering earthquakes and comets in works that blended philosophy with the mysteries of the cosmos. Forgotten truths emerging from solitude, his only son dying just weeks before the exile, adding layers of private grief to public hardship. Yet in this isolation, Seneca underwent a profound inner transformation, his writings deepening with reflections on anger, providence, and the brevity of life, embracing fate's twists as opportunities for the soul's growth. Recalled in 49 through the machinations of the younger, ambitious mother of the young Nero, Seneca returned to Rome. Appointed praetor and tasked with tutoring the 12-year-old, soon-to-be emperor, alongside the steadfast prefect, they formed a trio guiding the early reign from 54, a period of relative stability where Seneca's speeches for Nero promised reform and clemency. Yet beneath the surface, tensions brewed. As Nero matured, his indulgences grew, and Seneca accumulated vast wealth through loans and gifts, villas and estates amassing to fortunes that clashed with his preached simplicity. An inner conflict that haunted him, between the Stoic ideal of indifference to externals and the seductive grip of power and riches, moral tensions that shaped his essays on the happy life and tranquility, defending wealth as indifferent if used virtuously, yet knowing the hypocrisy whispered in court circles. As died in 62, Seneca's influence waned, Nero descending into tyranny, matricide justified in letters Seneca penned, a dark compromise that weighed heavily. Withdrawing gradually from public life, offering to return his wealth only to be refused, retiring to studies and writings on fate, anger, and death's approach, until 65, when the conspiracy unraveled, accusations flying, Nero's paranoia fixing on his old tutor, ordering suicide despite dubious evidence of involvement. In his villa, Seneca faced the end with stoic calm, opening veins with his devoted wife, who wished to join him but was saved. Blood flowing slowly due to age and frailty, dictating final words, taking poison, steaming in a bath to hasten the flow, accepting death as the ultimate test of reason over fear. His life a tapestry of contrasts, philosopher and politician, advisor to a monster yet seeker of virtue, whose conflicts illuminated the human struggle. His legacy enduring in letters and essays that teach control of the mind, the shortness of days, and serene acceptance of what must come. Influencing thinkers across ages with reflections on living wisely amid chaos, a forgotten truth that true freedom lies within, unbound by empire or exile. This mysterious journey ends here, but stay tuned for more untold stories in our next video. What insights might emerge if we linger a moment longer in the sun-drenched streets of Ancient, where a fragile boy named Seneca first opened his eyes to a world of rhetoric and ambition? How do you suppose his early frailty shaped his lifelong quest for inner strength, turning the body's weakness into a gateway for philosophical depth? And consider his journey to Rome as a young child, cradled perhaps in the care of a devoted aunt, immersed in the rigorous training of grammar, literature, and oratory under the shadow of the Forum. Might such an education, blended with early encounters with Stoic mentors like End, have planted the seeds of a mind that could endure exile, power, and ultimately death with equanimity? Have you ever wondered how a brief flirtation with vegetarianism, urged by Pythagorean influences yet abandoned at his father's insistence, reflects the delicate balance between personal conviction and familial duty in his formative years? Now reflect on those shadowy years of fragile health that drove him, in his 20s, to the healing climes of Egypt, residing with his aunt and her husband the prefect amid the timeless flow of the Nile. What hidden truths about nature's vastness and human insignificance might he have uncovered there, observing ancient wonders and drier airs that eased his breathing, long before he penned his natural questions exploring earthquakes, comets, and the mysteries of the cosmos. Returning renewed to Rome around 31 CE, he blossomed as an orator and senator, his eloquence shining yet drawing the dangerous envy of Caligula. How close he came to execution, spared only by whispers of his impending natural death from illness. Does this not illuminate the precarious dance between talent and tyranny in imperial courts? Yet fate twisted again under Claudius, with accusations, perhaps fabricated, of adultery leading to 8 long years of exile on rugged Corsica in 41 CE, a barren island that stripped him of family, fortune, and the recent grief of losing his only son. Can you imagine the inner transformation forged in such isolation, where he consoled his mother that true exile is merely a change of place, for the mind remains free, and delved deeper into providence, anger, and the brevity of life? His writings blooming amid solitude, like forgotten truths emerging from hardship. Recalled in 49 CE by the ambitious to tutor her young son Nero, alongside the steadfast, he helped guide the early reign toward stability in those famed 5 years of relative peace and reform. Yet beneath it all, as Nero matured and indulgences grew, Seneca amassed vast wealth through loans, villas, and favors, clashing with his preached indifference to externals. What profound moral tensions must have haunted him, defending riches as indifferent if used virtuously in essays on the happy life, while whispers of hypocrisy echoed in court. As died in 62 CE and Nero's tyranny deepened, matricide justified in letters Seneca drafted, a dark compromise weighing heavily. He gradually, offering to return his fortune only to be refused, retiring to profound reflections on fate, anger, and approaching death, until the unraveling of the conspiracy in 65 CE drew Nero's paranoia upon him, ordering suicide despite scant evidence of involvement. In his villa with devoted wife by his side, he opened veins slowly, dictated final words, took poison, and steamed in a bath to hasten the end, embodying Stoic calm and accepting reason over fear. How does this final act reveal the human struggle to align philosophy with life's compromises, illuminating our own conflicts between virtue and power, wealth and simplicity? And pondering his enduring legacy, influencing early Christian affinities through perceived parallels in conscience and kinship with a beneficent divine, echoed in thinkers like who defended him amid accusations of inconsistency, and drawing on his views of monarchy and duty. Might Seneca's writings on controlling the mind amid chaos, the shortness of days, and serene acceptance of fate continue to guide us in uncovering forgotten truths about resilience in an unpredictable world? What deeper layers of Seneca's early life might we uncover if we pause to consider how his chronic breathing difficulties, often described in his own letters as attacks of catarrh and shortness of breath that brought him to the brink of despair, served not merely as physical torment, but as a profound teacher, compelling a young man to confront mortality long before most do, and perhaps forging his Stoic conviction that true strength resides in the mind's mastery over the body's frailties. Imagine him as a youth in Rome, studying under and briefly embracing ascetic practices, only to face suicidal thoughts during severe episodes. How might such brushes with death have deepened his appreciation for philosophy as a remedy for the soul, leading him to seek recovery in Egypt's drier climate, where he resided with his influential aunt and observed the Nile's eternal rhythms, pondering natural phenomena that later filled his natural questions with reflections on comets, earthquakes, and the interconnectedness of the cosmos. As he returned to Rome around age 30, entering the Senate and dazzling with oratory that nearly cost him his life under Caligula's envious gaze, spared, legend says, because his illness promised a natural end soon. Can you sense the precarious balance he navigated between ambition and survival, a theme that echoes through his essays on anger and providence? Then came the abrupt fall in 41 CE, exiled to Corsica on charges likely fabricated by, compounded by the fresh grief of losing his only infant son just weeks prior. Might this double blow of personal loss and isolation have been the crucible for his deepest transformation, where amid barren cliffs and endless sea, he composed consolations to his mother, insisting that exile changes only the place, not the person, and blending genuine comfort with subtle pleas for recall. All while studying the island's geology and skis, turning hardship into philosophical gold. Recalled in 49 CE by to tutor her son Nero, a boy of 12 whose early reign, guided alongside, brought a golden quinquennium of reform and clemency, speeches penned by Seneca promising a new era. Yet as Nero's passions darkened, leading to poisoning and matricide, which Seneca justified in crafted letters, how profoundly must those moral compromises have gnawed at him, fueling essays like On the Happy Life, where he defends wealth as indifferent if wielded virtuously. Even as his own fortunes swelled to immense levels through loans and imperial favors, villas spanning empires, revealing the raw tension between Stoic indifference and the allure of power that shaped his warnings on the brevity of life and the madness of unchecked desire. With death in 62 CE, influence crumbling as Nero embraced tyranny, Seneca twice offered retirement and his riches, refused both times, withdrawing to private study until the plot's exposure in 65 CE ensnared him, likely innocent, yet condemned, ordering his suicide. In Tacitus's vivid account, veins opened slowly due to age and thin blood, poison ineffective, final dictation of thoughts amid friends, steam bath to hasten the end, wife joining briefly before soldiers saved her. Does this drawn-out, composed departure not embody the ultimate Stoic rehearsal, accepting fate with reason triumphant over fear, his last words a legacy of resilience? And reflecting on how his works won 24 moral letters, dialogues on tranquility and providence, tragedies rife with fury and fate, influenced early Christians who forged correspondence with, seeing parallels in conscience and divine kinship, preserved his texts through medieval anthologies, inspired spirited defenses amid hypocrisy charges. His views on duty, even reforms. Might Seneca's enduring appeal lie precisely in his humanity? A philosopher who preached virtue, yet wrestled with wealth and power, reminding us that the path to wisdom is fraught with contradictions, inviting us to examine our own tensions between ideal and reality. What hidden facets of Seneca's character might reveal themselves if we delve into the intimate details of his family life? Consider his marriage to a first wife, whose name escapes history's grasp, bearing him a son who died in infancy just before exile, a loss that compounded the isolation of Corsica. How might such personal sorrow have intensified his reflections on the fragility of happiness and the Stoic call to endure what fate delivers without complaint? And his later union with a younger woman of devotion who chose to share his final moments by opening her own veins. Does this not speak to a bond forged in mutual respect for philosophical resolve, illuminating how relationships can mirror or challenge one's pursuit of virtue? Ponder, too, the breadth of his literary output during those Corsican years. Not only consolations but early versions of dialogues on anger, where he dissects the passion as a temporary madness destructive to reason, and on providence, exploring why the good suffer while trusting in cosmic order. Might these works, born of enforced leisure, represent an expression of Stoicism untainted by later court compromises, inviting us to question whether adversity truly refines the soul or merely tests its pretensions? As he observed Corsica's rugged terrain, earthquakes rumbling beneath, winds shaping cliffs, did these natural forces inspire his later natural questions? A scientific philosophical inquiry into mirrors, winds, waters, and celestial phenomena, blending empirical curiosity with moral lessons on humanity's place in the grand design. Upon recall to Rome in 49 CE, stepping into the role of Nero's tutor at the boy's adoption by Claudius, imagine the delicate task of shaping a teenage emperor-to-be, instilling rhetoric, philosophy, and governance alongside military discipline. During the promising early years from 54 to 59 CE, often called the quinquennium, policies of moderation and justice prevailed, with Seneca's hand evident in speeches like on clemency, advising the young ruler to wield power with mercy as its companion. Yet how early might the seeds of divergence have sprouted, as Nero's artistic inclinations and nocturnal escapades clashed with Seneca's counsel, foreshadowing the moral tensions that would erode their alliance? Reflect on the mechanisms of his wealth accumulation. Vast loans to British chieftains at exorbitant rates after Boudicca's revolt, investments in vineyards and estates across Italy, Gaul, and Egypt, amassing a fortune estimated at 300 million sesterces. Does this not starkly contrast his essays declaring wealth neutral, usable for good if the mind remains detached, prompting us to explore the psychologist's dilemma of whether one can preach simplicity while embracing opulence? Or if such rationalizations mask deeper human vulnerabilities to ambition and security? As cracks widened, poisoned in 55 CE, murdered in 59 CE with Seneca implicated in apologetic writings like the Lost Vita, how might these events have forced nightly reckonings, fueling treatises on the brevity of life, urging readers to live each day as complete, mindful that time is our most irreplaceable possession? With suspicious death in 62 CE, possibly poisoned, Seneca's position crumbled. Attempts to retire thwarted, he navigated increasing isolation until 64 CE's Great Fire, where rumors falsely pinned blame on Nero, and Christians suffered as scapegoats. Though Seneca silent, does his absence from defense reveal the limits of philosophical courage in tyranny's grip? Culminating in the conspiracy of 65 CE, a sprawling plot involving senators, knights, and guards, uncovered through a swarning, leading to executions of Lucan, Seneca's nephew, and many others. Though evidence against Seneca was thin, perhaps a subordinate's confession or mere association, Nero seized the opportunity. How does the philosopher's composed response, gathering friends, dictating final thoughts, emulating Socrates in calm departure, affirm that preparation through lifelong rehearsal of death renders it not fearsome but liberating? And tracing his influence forward, medieval monks preserving texts for moral instruction, Renaissance humanists like editing letters, Enlightenment figures debating his consistency, modern therapists drawing on cognitive techniques in his anger management. Might Seneca's greatest legacy be his unflinching portrayal of human imperfection, showing that wisdom emerges not from flawless lives, but from honest grappling with contradiction, encouraging us all to examine our own divides between belief and behavior. What further depths might we explore in Seneca's tragedies, those 9 intense dramas like Medea, Phaedra, and Thyestes, filled with raging passions, vengeful ghosts, and familial horrors recounted in vivid rhetoric? Could these works, possibly composed during his Corsican exile or later retirement, serve as a hidden outlet for his own inner turmoil, mirroring the uncontrolled emotions he warned against in his philosophical essays? Or perhaps critiquing the tyrannical excesses he witnessed at Nero's court without direct accusation? And imagine the controversy surrounding his immense wealth, estimated at 300 million sesterces from shrewd investments like high-interest loans to British tribes that may have fueled Boudicca's revolt. How might this stark contradiction with his Stoic teachings on detachment from riches have tormented him, prompting defenses in on the happy life that wealth is indifferent if the mind remains virtuous, yet revealing the profound human challenge of aligning precept with practice? Consider, too, the lesser-known forgery of correspondence between Seneca and Saint, fabricated in the 4th century to bridge Stoicism and early Christianity, seeing parallels in moral conscience and divine providence. Does this not highlight how Seneca's emphasis on inner freedom and ethical living resonated so deeply with Christian thinkers that they sought to claim him as one of their own, preserving his texts through medieval monasteries and influencing figures like who called him our Seneca? Ponder his natural questions, that encyclopedic inquiry into comets, earthquakes, winds, and waters, blending scientific observation with moral reflections on nature's power and human humility. Might this work, written in his later years, represent a return to contemplative pursuits amid political withdrawal, uncovering forgotten truths about the cosmos as a mirror for the soul's tranquility? As we reflect on his final years after his death, withdrawing despite Nero's refusals of retirement, focusing on letters to that explore daily ethics, time's value, and death's approach, how does the unraveling of the conspiracy, with its sprawling web of senators and guards betrayed by cast a shadow of paranoia, leading to accusations against Seneca based on flimsy associations, yet prompting his exemplary end as described by Tacitus? Gathering friends, dictating final thoughts, veins opened reluctantly due to age, poison ineffective, steam bath hastening release, all while emulating Socrates' calm. And in that drawn-out departure, with devoted attempt to join him halted by imperial order, can we not discern the ultimate reconciliation of his life's tensions, philosophy triumphing over fear in acceptance of fate? Finally, tracing lesser-known threads of his legacy, shaping Renaissance tragedy through bloody themes influencing Shakespeare, quoted by in defenses against hypocrisy charges, drawing parallels in reforms or duty. Might Seneca's enduring power lie in his unflinching humanity? A thinker who wrestled openly with power's corruption, wealth's seduction, and virtue's demands, inviting us to confront our own inconsistencies with compassion and resolve. What further mysteries might unfold if we linger on the vivid tragedies Seneca crafted? Works like the blood-soaked Thyestes, where a king unwittingly devours his own children, or Phaedra consumed by forbidden passion. Could these dramatic explorations of unchecked fury and fate serve as a veiled critique of the very court excesses he navigated, allowing him to channel the horrors of Nero's emerging tyranny into art without direct peril? Or do they reveal his own fascination with the passions he philosophically condemned? And reflecting on his time along the eternal Nile during recovery in Egypt, observing Roman kiosks and ancient temples rising from the waters, how might those serene yet monumental landscapes have inspired his later inquiries into nature's forces, reminding him of humanity's fleeting place within a vast, ordered cosmos? Consider the bustling Roman Forum of his youth, a reconstructed hub of debate and power where his oratorical talents first shone. Might the echoes of speeches there have foreshadowed both his rise and the dangerous envy it provoked? Ponder the marble busts that capture his contemplative gaze, often stern yet introspective. Do they not invite us to see the man behind the philosopher, one who wrestled daily with the contradictions of wealth, power, and virtue? Imagine his birthplace with its enduring Roman temple ruins standing as silent witnesses to provincial origins that propelled him to imperial circles. How might those distant roots have grounded his reflections on fate's unpredictable paths? And the rugged, ancient landscapes of Corsica, where menhirs and prehistoric sites dot the island of his exile. Could the isolation amid such timeless stones have deepened his sense of inner freedom, turning barren confinement into a forge for profound insight? Finally, reconstructions of Nero's appearance, often youthful yet marked by later indulgence. Does gazing upon the face of the emperor he once guided not sharpen our understanding of the tragic divergence between mentor's ideals and pupil's dissent, illuminating the limits of philosophy in the face of absolute power? As these images and reflections draw us closer to Seneca's world, might we not discover that his greatest teaching lies in embracing our own imperfections, using reason to navigate life's storms with grace and curiosity? What unexplored corners of Seneca's mind might we illuminate if we turn our attention to his moral letters too? Those 124 intimate epistles composed in his later years, as a kind of philosophical diary. Could these not represent his most personal attempt to reconcile the contradictions of his life, addressing a younger friend yet truly speaking to himself about the proper use of time, the folly of anger, and the daily practice of virtue amid retirement's quiet? Imagine him in his villas, surrounded by the very luxuries he questioned, penning admonitions to live simply and fully in the present. How might such writings reveal the ongoing inner dialogue between the courtier who amassed empires of wealth and the Stoic who proclaimed freedom lies only in the mind's dominion? Ponder the influence of his father, Seneca the Elder, whose and preserved declamations on rhetorical themes. Might the son's brilliant yet sometimes overwrought style in speeches and tragedies owe a debt to this familial training in eloquence, even as he transcended mere oratory to infuse philosophy with dramatic power? And consider his nephew Lucan, the epic poet whose anti-imperial undertones in depicting civil war led to his own forced suicide alongside his uncle in the aftermath. Does this familial bond, strained yet profound, not highlight how Seneca's circle became entangled in the very webs of resistance he may have quietly sympathized with? Reflect, too, on lesser-known aspects of his philosophical lineage, drawing deeply from earlier Stoics like Zeno, and yet adapting their teachings for Roman practicality, softening rigid dogma with humane flexibility. Might this pragmatic approach explain why he could justify wealth and political involvement as compatible with virtue, offering a Stoicism accessible to statesmen rather than hermits, and thus ensuring its survival through turbulent times? As we trace the threads of his final acceptance, with veins opened in deliberate ritual final words dictated to scribes even as breath faded, emulating not just Socrates, but the Stoic ideal of rational departure, how does this prolonged, composed end invite us to question whether lifelong rehearsal of mortality truly transforms death from terror to transition, freeing the spirit to meet fate with open eyes? And lingering on the broader ripples, his tragedies shaping the bloody grandeur of Renaissance and Elizabethan drama, his essays guiding introspective wanderings, and even touching the moral psychology of modern cognitive therapies that echo his techniques for reframing destructive emotions. Might Seneca's most enduring gift be his honest portrayal of human inconsistency, reminding us that wisdom grows not in flawless purity, but in courageous confrontation with our own shadows, encouraging each of us to examine where philosophy and lived reality diverge in our own journeys. What subtle distinctions might we uncover if we examine Seneca's treatise on anger more closely? That three-book dialogue where he dissects rage as a brief madness, more harmful to the soul than any external injury. Could his vivid descriptions of anger's physical symptoms, the burning face and heaving chest, draw from personal observations of imperial courts, or even his own struggles to temper ambition's fire, inviting us to ask how mastering this passion became central to his vision of a tranquil life? And consider his dialogue on providence, addressing why the good endure hardships while the wicked prosper. Might this work, likely refined during Corsican solitude, reflect his own reconciliation with exile and loss, proposing that trials are divine training for the soul's strength, prompting us to wonder whether such a perspective truly consoles in the face of injustice, or merely reframes it as part of a greater cosmic order. Ponder the role of friendship in his philosophy, celebrated in letters urging mutual improvement and honest counsel. How might his relationships with, and even the complex bond with Nero, reveal the Stoic ideal of the sage as rare yet approachable through shared pursuit of wisdom, encouraging us to reflect on whether true friends serve as mirrors for our virtues and flaws alike. As we trace his views on time in On the Shortness of Life, lamenting how most squander days in distraction or delay, does this urgent call to live fully in the present, treating each moment as irreplaceable, not arise from his own regrets amid political distractions and accumulated years, leading us to question how we ourselves allocate the fleeting gift of hours? Reflect, too, on his tragedies once more, often debated as Stoic or anti-Stoic with their portrayals of overwhelming fate and passion. Might the chorus's pleas for moderation amid horror serve as philosophical commentary? Or do the unrelenting cruelties suggest a darker view of human nature unchecked by reason, inviting exploration of whether art can warn where direct precept might fail? And lingering on his influence through the ages, quoted by early church fathers like Tertullian, and for moral alignment, preserved in medieval, revived in Petrarch's humanism. How does Seneca's adaptable Stoicism, blending rigor with compassion, continue to speak across eras? Perhaps because it acknowledges human weakness while insisting on the possibility of progress. Might we not find, in the end, that Seneca's deepest teaching emerges from his life's very contradictions? A man who preached poverty yet died immensely rich, who advised emperors yet met a tyrant's command with serenity, encouraging us to embrace our own imperfect journeys toward wisdom with patience and persistent inquiry. What nuances might emerge if we explore Seneca's On Clemency, that early treatise addressed to the young Nero, urging the emperor to view mercy as the finest ornament of power, restraining vengeance through reason? Could this work, penned in the hopeful dawn of the quinquennium, reflect Seneca's genuine aspiration to shape a just ruler? Or does it subtly reveal his own strategy for tempering absolute authority with philosophical restraint, prompting us to wonder how counsel to others often mirrors the advisor's inner hopes and fears? And consider his dialogue on the tranquility of the mind, advising on balancing activity and retreat. Might this not echo Seneca's own oscillations between public ambition and private withdrawal, suggesting that true serenity arises not from escaping the world, but from engaging it with detached equanimity, inviting us to reflect on where we ourselves seek peace amid life's demands? Ponder his views on slavery, scattered through letters where he insists slaves share the same rational nature and deserve humane treatment. How does this progressive stance for a Roman elite challenge the era's norms, yet coexist with his ownership of many household slaves, leading us to question the boundaries between philosophical ideal and societal reality in pursuing virtue? As we delve into On Benefits, his exploration of giving and receiving gracefully without expectation, does this intricate analysis of gratitude and obligation arise from observations of court favors and betrayals, teaching that true generosity frees the giver more than the recipient, encouraging us to examine our own motives in acts of kindness? Reflect, too, on the apocryphal, his biting satire of Claudius's deification as a pumpkin. Might this anonymous jab, if truly his, reveal a sharper wit and political frustration beneath the Stoic calm, reminding us that humor can serve as a valve for truths too dangerous to state plainly? And lingering on his concept of the premeditation of future evils to lessen their sting, how might this practice, urged in letters as daily rehearsal, have sustained him through exile, compromise, and final command, inviting us to consider whether imagining loss truly robs misfortune of its power when it arrives? Might we discover, through these varied facets, that Seneca's philosophy thrives precisely in its practicality, offering tools not for perfect sages, but for imperfect humans navigating ambition, loss, and time's relentless flow, encouraging us to apply his questions to our own lives with gentle curiosity and persistent effort. What hidden wisdom might we glean from Seneca's On the Happy Life, dedicated to his brother, where he argues that true happiness stems from virtue alone, yet defends the philosopher's right to enjoy wealth and honors if they come without compromising the soul? Could this nuanced stance reflect his personal effort to harmonize Stoic ideals with the realities of immense fortune and influence, inviting us to ponder whether external goods can truly remain indifferent when they shape daily existence so profoundly? And consider his treatise on favors, that 7-book exploration of giving, receiving, and returning benefits with pure intent. Might the emphasis on ungrudging generosity and the dangers of obligation arise from keen observations of imperial patronage, where favors often masked manipulation, prompting us to examine how gratitude, when genuine, both giver and receiver in ways obligation never can. Ponder his lesser-discussed consolation, too, written early to a grieving mother over her son's death. How does his counsel to view loss through reason's lens, seeing the departed as returned to nature rather than stolen, reveal a compassionate adaptation of Stoic doctrine, encouraging us to ask whether such reframing truly heals sorrow or merely teaches endurance amid inevitable separation? As we reflect on his views of fate and free will, woven through dialogues like On Providence, does his assertion that we consent to whatever happens, by understanding its place in the cosmic whole, not offer a profound liberation, leading us to wonder how embracing necessity transforms apparent evils into opportunities for virtue's exercise? Imagine, too, his daily routine in later letters, rising early for study, walking for reflection, limiting meals and wine. Might these practices of self-discipline serve as practical embodiments of his teachings, reminding us that philosophy lives not in grand declarations, but in moment-to-moment choices aligned with reason? And lingering on the paradox of his tragedies, Stoic choruses pleading moderation amid unstoppable passion and cruelty. Could these works function as cautionary mirrors, showing what becomes of souls unchecked by philosophy, inviting us to explore whether art's exaggeration of vice better warns than precept's calm instruction? Might we not conclude, through this ever-deepening inquiry, that Seneca's true mastery lies in his invitation to ongoing self-examination, never claiming perfection, always urging progress, encouraging each of us to meet life's contradictions with the same curious, resilient spirit he cultivated through trial and reflection? What deeper resonances might we uncover if we linger on Seneca's Consolation too, that delicate work penned during Corsican exile to Claudius's powerful freedman mourning a brother? Could his blend of genuine sympathy with subtle pleas for intercession reveal the philosopher's pragmatic navigation of hardship, prompting us to explore how consolation, when offered upward, balances authenticity with the hope of relief, and whether true comfort can coexist with self-interest? And consider his dialogue on the brevity of life, addressed to his father-in-law, urging that life is not short but made so by waste and distraction. Might this passionate plea arise from Seneca's own midlife reckoning after exile's enforced leisure, inviting us to question how we distinguish between necessary duties and the endless pursuits that steal our finite days, and what practices might reclaim time as our most precious possession? Ponder his exploration of natural phenomena in the Natural Questions, dedicating books to lightning, comets, earthquakes, and the Nile's flood. How does his blend of scientific curiosity with moral analogy, viewing nature's power as a reminder of human limits, reflect a mind seeking cosmic perspective amid personal and political turmoil, encouraging us to wonder whether contemplating the universe's vast order truly fosters tranquility in our own smaller storms? As we reflect on his letters' recurring theme of the deliberate visualization of loss to diminish fear, might this technique, drawn from earlier Stoics yet personalized through his experiences of illness, exile, and bereavement, offer a profound tool for resilience, leading us to ask how imagining adversity in calm moments prepares the soul to meet it with composure rather than panic? Imagine, too, his views on old age in letters describing physical decline, yet insisting the mind can remain vigorous, Does this optimistic stance, written as his own body weakened, not challenge us to consider whether true aging lies in the spirit's surrender or in the body's inevitable decay, and how we might cultivate inner youth through continual learning and reflection? And lingering on the dramatic intensity of his tragedy Hercules, where madness drives the hero to slay his own family, could this mythic exploration of reason overthrown by passion serve as a stark warning against the anger he dissected philosophically, inviting us to explore whether such artistic extremes better illuminate vice's consequences than measured prose ever could? Might we discover, as we weave these threads further, that Seneca's enduring appeal stems from his refusal to present philosophy as abstract perfection, instead offering it as a living practice for flawed humans facing real temptations, losses, and choices, encouraging us to approach our own contradictions not with harsh judgment, but with patient inquiry and gentle resolve toward better alignment? What might it feel like to sit quietly with Seneca as a friend, not as a distant historical figure, but as someone sharing a gentle conversation over a simple meal in one of his villas, perhaps on a calm evening when the worries of Rome feel far away, and to ask him softly about the moments that shaped his heart the most? Imagine him smiling with that thoughtful warmth, telling you first about his childhood in Sunny, running through olive groves with his brothers, listening to his father's stories of great orators, yet already feeling the tightness in his chest that made deep breaths a small daily victory. How do you suppose those early struggles with fragile health taught a young boy to treasure quiet moments of reflection and to find joy in ideas rather than endless play? And if he leaned in closer, like an older friend sharing something personal, might he speak of his journey to Egypt as a young man, sailing down the Nile under endless blue skies, watching the river rise and fall with ancient rhythm, feeling his breathing ease in the warm, dry air? Could those peaceful months surrounded by timeless temples and kind family have planted in him a gentle trust that nature itself can heal, and that sometimes stepping away from ambition brings the clearest kind of strength? Picture him chuckling softly as he recalls his first triumphs in the Roman Senate, the thrill of words flowing beautifully, winning applause, yet noticing how quickly praise could turn to envy, especially from emperors like Caligula who didn't like sharing the spotlight. How might that close brush with danger have quietly reminded him that fame is a fragile friend, and that true safety lives inside one's own calm mind rather than in the crowd's cheers? When the conversation turned to harder times, his sudden exile to Corsica, the fresh grief of losing his little son, the loneliness of rocky shores and empty days, perhaps his voice would soften even more, telling you how those long years alone with books and stars became an unexpected gift. Might writing letters to his faraway mother, assuring her that the soul can stay free no matter where the body is sent, have been his gentle way of comforting himself too, discovering that kindness toward others often heals our own hidden hurts? And later, when fortune smiled again, returning to Rome, guiding a young Nero with hope in his heart, believing wisdom could gentle power, how do you think he felt watching those early years of fair rule slowly slip toward darker paths? Could the quiet tension he carried, between loving luxury yet preaching simplicity, have made him an even kinder teacher, someone who understood how easy it is for any of us to wander from our best intentions? If toward the end of your friendly evening together, he spoke of his final days, gathering loved ones close, opening veins with steady hands, speaking calmly as life gently ebbed, might he share with a warm, peaceful smile that all the reading, writing, and reflecting had prepared him not to fear the end, but to meet it like an old companion coming to lead him home? And as you part ways under a quiet starlit sky, might you carry away the gentlest lesson of all, that Seneca, for all his brilliance and flaws, was simply a fellow traveler trying his best, just like us, to live with courage, kindness, and a little more wisdom each day. This friendly visit with Seneca draws gently to a close, but stay tuned for more warm stories from history in our next gathering. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so we can meet again soon. Thank you for sharing this peaceful time together, and until next time, rest well. What might it feel like to walk alongside Seneca as a dear companion on a quiet path through one of his favorite gardens? perhaps near one of his peaceful country villas, where the air carries the soft scent of herbs and the distant hum of bees. Imagine him pausing to touch a leaf gently, turning to you with that kind, knowing smile, and asking what you notice about how the plants grow strong even in rocky soil. Could such simple moments in nature have been his quiet reminders that resilience often blooms in the most unexpected places, just as it did in his own life through illness, exile, and the ups and downs of fortune? And if you shared with him how sometimes we all feel pulled between wanting comfort and trying to live more simply, might he nod warmly, remembering his own grand homes and vast gardens, yet speak softly about how true richness comes from appreciating what's right in front of us, perhaps inviting you to wonder together whether enjoying life's gifts with a grateful heart can coexist with a spirit that stays light and free. Picture sitting with him under a shady tree as the afternoon fades, sharing stories of family. He might tell you tenderly about his mother's strength, his brother's laughter, the little son he held so briefly, and the devoted who stood by him to the very end. How do you suppose those deep bonds of love and loss shaped his gentle belief that kindness toward others, even in small daily ways, is one of the paths to a contented heart? When the conversation drifted to friendship, might he lean forward with genuine warmth, asking what qualities you most cherish in the people closest to you, perhaps sharing how letters to friends felt like quiet visits across miles, full of encouragement and honest reflection? Could writing those letters have been his way of keeping friendship alive and growing, reminding both himself and others that we become better simply by caring about each other's journeys? And as the sun dips lower, painting the sky in soft colors, might he speak quietly about facing difficult endings, not with fear, but with the same gentle acceptance he showed that final day, surrounded by loved ones, feeling that a life lived with as much honesty and kindness as possible is already complete? How might carrying that peaceful perspective help us meet our own uncertain moments with a little more courage and grace? As your friendly walk together gently winds down, with the stars beginning to appear one by one, might you both smile at how these simple, heartfelt conversations, full of questions, listening, and shared wonder, are perhaps the truest kind of wisdom there is. This warm visit with Seneca draws softly to a close, but stay tuned for more kind and gentle stories from history in our next gathering. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so we can meet again soon. Thank you for sharing this peaceful time together, and until next time, rest well. What might it feel like to linger a little longer with our friend Seneca as the evening deepens, perhaps strolling slowly back toward the villa while fireflies begin to dance in the warm air, and to ask him gently about the quiet achievements that meant the most to him, not the grand speeches in the Senate or the vast estates, but the smaller, deeper victories of the heart and mind? Imagine him pausing beneath a lantern's soft glow, eyes twinkling with quiet joy as he shares how one of his greatest accomplishments was simply learning to breathe more easily, not just in body during those healing months in Egypt, but in spirit, finding moments of true peace amid life's storms. Could discovering that inner calm, no matter where fate placed him, have felt like the sweetest triumph of all? And if you asked about his writings, might he speak warmly of the letters too? Those heartfelt notes sent across miles like gentle conversations with a dear companion. How finishing each one, knowing it might encourage even one person to live more wisely or kindly, felt like planting a tiny seed that could grow long after he was gone. What joy do you suppose he found in realizing his words could travel through time, offering comfort and courage to people he would never meet? Picture him smiling softly as he recalls guiding young Nero in those early hopeful years, when fair laws were passed and mercy seemed possible. Might he count those seasons of relative peace as a shared achievement, proof that wisdom and kindness can, for a while, soften even the hardest power? And even when things darkened, could choosing to withdraw gracefully rather than cling to influence have felt like another quiet victory, honoring his deepest values over fleeting favor? When the talk turns to his final day, might he describe with peaceful warmth how facing the end with steady hands and loving friends nearby was perhaps his most complete accomplishment, living out the philosophy he had practiced for decades, showing that a human life can end not in fear or regret, but in gentle acceptance and gratitude for everything it held. And as you reach the villa door together, might he turn to you with that same kind, encouraging smile and ask what achievements matter most in your own life. The big, shining ones everyone sees, or the quieter ones where you stayed true to your heart, offered kindness, grew a little wiser, or simply met a hard moment with courage. What small or large victories have you already gathered along your path that deserve a moment of gentle celebration tonight? This warm visit with Seneca draws tenderly to a close, but stay tuned for more kind and gentle stories from history in our next gathering. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so we can meet again soon. Thank you for sharing this peaceful time together, and until next time, rest well. What might unfold in your heart if we lingered just a moment longer with our gentle friend Seneca, perhaps now seated together on a soft bench overlooking a quiet pond where moonlight dances on the water, and you asked him with a warm smile about the achievements he never spoke of loudly, the ones that lived quietly within him like hidden treasures. Imagine him gazing thoughtfully at the ripples, then turning to you with that familiar kindness in his eyes, sharing softly how one of his deepest joys was simply learning to meet each day with a little more gratitude, waking even in exile or uncertainty, and finding something small to appreciate. The sound of waves on Corsica's shore, a letter from a friend, or the simple gift of another morning to think and grow. Could noticing and cherishing those ordinary beauties have been, for him, a quiet daily triumph far greater than any public honor? And if you wondered aloud about his legacy, might he chuckle gently and say that his truest accomplishment was never the wealth or influence, but the thousands of moments he chose kindness over anger, patience over haste, honesty over convenience, especially when no one was watching. How do you suppose those unseen choices, repeated over a lifetime, shaped not just his character but the gentle light he could offer others? Picture him leaning closer, voice soft as the evening breeze, telling you how proud he felt, not of villas or speeches, but of the young minds he encouraged, like, or even Nero in brighter days, whenever a word or example helped someone take one small step toward greater wisdom or peace. Might the real measure of a life well lived, he'd ask with a warm glance, lie in the quiet ways we help others carry their burdens a little lighter? When talk drifted to his writings scattered across time, might he share with humble wonder how astonishing it felt to imagine strangers centuries later finding comfort in his letters during their own hard nights? Could knowing his vulnerabilities and hopes might ease someone else's loneliness have been the most unexpected and heartfelt achievement of all? And as a final gentle question before the night fully embraces the garden, might he turn to you with sincere curiosity and ask, what quiet achievements glow warmly in your own life? The moments you stayed true to your values, offered forgiveness, learned from a mistake, or simply showed up with an open heart? How might pausing to honor those, no matter how small they seem, fill your days with the same peaceful pride Seneca carried to his last breath? This warm visit with Seneca draws softly to its close, like a dear friend saying good night with a gentle embrace. Stay tuned for more kind and gentle stories from history in our next gathering. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so we can meet again soon. Thank you for sharing this peaceful time together. And until next time, rest well, knowing your own quiet victories matter more than you might ever know. What might happen in your own heart if we stayed just a little longer in this peaceful garden with our kind friend Seneca, perhaps now watching the moon rise fully over the still pond, its silver light touching everything with gentle quiet, and you turned to him with a soft, curious smile to ask about one more quiet achievement he cherished above all others. Imagine him looking at you with that warm, steady gaze, pausing for a moment as if gathering the simplest and truest words, then sharing in a voice as calm as the night air that his greatest accomplishment was never any single moment of glory or survival, but the slow, patient growth of learning to love life exactly as it came. Joyful days with gratitude, painful ones with trust, ordinary ones with full presence. Could accepting everything, not with resignation but with an open and tender heart, have felt to him like the most beautiful victory a person can win. And if you asked whether he ever felt he had achieved everything, might he laugh softly, the sound light and free, and gently shake his head, telling you that the beauty of the journey lies in knowing there is always more to learn, more kindness to offer, more wonder to discover. How do you suppose that humble awareness, that we are forever students of life rather than its masters, could itself be the fullest kind of accomplishment, leaving no room for regret, only quiet thankfulness? Picture him reaching out as if to place a reassuring hand on your shoulder, asking with genuine care, "What would achieving everything feel like to you, not in the eyes of the world, but in the gentle quiet of your own heart?" Might it be the day you realize you have loved well, forgiven freely, grown steadily, and met both sunlight and shadow with the same courageous openness? And as the night deepens around you both, filled with the soft songs of crickets and the scent of cooling earth, might you feel together that every breath taken with awareness, every small act of kindness, every moment of honest reflection is already a quiet achievement weaving your life into something beautiful and complete, just as Seneca's was in all its human richness. This warm visit with Seneca drifts gently to its close, like a dear dream fading softly into starlight. Stay tuned for more kind and gentle stories from history in our next gathering. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so we can meet again soon. Thank you for sharing this peaceful time together. And until next time, rest well, carrying the quiet glow of your own beautiful achievements close to your heart. What might we discover together if we returned once more to that quiet garden path with our dear friend Seneca, perhaps on a crisp morning when the first light touches the dew-kissed leaves, and we walked slowly side by side, allowing the full length of his life story to unfold gently, like a long scroll unrolling in the soft breeze. Imagine beginning at the very start, in the warm provincial sunlight of around 4 BCE, where a sensitive, often breathless boy grew up listening to his father's tales of great Roman speakers. How do you suppose those early stories of eloquence, combined with his own physical fragility, sparked a lifelong hunger not just for words, but for wisdom that could steady a trembling body and an anxious heart? Might those childhood days, spent more in quiet study than rough play, have quietly prepared him for a life where inner strength would matter far more than outward vigor? And as we stroll further, picture the young Seneca arriving in Rome with his family, plunging into rigorous training in rhetoric and philosophy under teachers like the Stoic. Could those intense years of learning, marked by brief experiments in ascetic living and deep discussions about virtue, have planted the first gentle seeds of a belief that true happiness depends only on the soul's choices, not on fortune's gifts? When illness pressed hard in his 20s, driving him to seek healing along the timeless Nile in Egypt, staying with his aunt and watching the river's eternal rise and fall, how might those months of recovery, surrounded by ancient monuments and vast deserts, have deepened his sense of life's brevity and nature's grandeur, quietly shaping the reflections he would later share in his Natural Questions? Returning to Rome stronger yet still vulnerable, entering public life as a brilliant orator and senator, might the thrill of early success, followed so quickly by Caligula's dangerous envy, and a near execution spared only by rumors of his frail health, have taught him early that fame is a double-edged gift, sharpening his appreciation for philosophy as a refuge from fortune's sudden turns? Then came the storm of 41 CE, false accusations, exile to barren Corsica, and the heartbreaking loss of his only son just weeks before departure. Can you feel how those 8 long years of isolation, with only windswept cliffs and distant sea for company, might have become the deepest classroom of his life? How could writing consolations to his mother, insisting that the mind remains free wherever the body is sent, or studying the island's earthquakes and stars, have slowly transformed hardship into a quiet, profound inner growth? When recall finally came in 49 CE, through ambition, and he stepped into the role of tutor to young Nero alongside the steadfast, might those hopeful early years of guiding a teenage emperor, seeing fair policies and clemency take root, have felt like the chapter, a time when philosophy seemed able to gentle power itself? Yet as we walk on, the path grows more shaded. Nero's maturing passions, the poisoning of, the matricide justified in Seneca's careful words, the swelling of immense wealth through loans and favors. How do you imagine those years weighed on his heart, creating the tender tension between preached simplicity and lived luxury that colored so many of his later letters and essays? With gone in 62 CE, influence fading, attempts to retire and return riches gently refused, might the slow withdrawal into study and writing have been his quiet way of reclaiming inner peace, turning once more to daily reflections on time, anger, tranquility, and the approach of death? And when the conspiracy unraveled in 65 CE, bringing Nero's command to end his own life, picture the calm gathering of friends, the deliberate opening of veins, the ineffective poison, the final steam bath. His devoted wish to join him stayed only by force. Could that drawn-out, composed departure have been the fullest living out of everything he had gently practiced and taught, meeting fate with reason, gratitude, and serene acceptance? As our long morning walk together nears its natural pause, with the sun now higher and birds singing around us, might we both feel the full arc of Seneca's life not as a series of triumphs or tragedies, but as a deeply human journey of continual learning, kindness amid contradiction, and quiet courage in the face of whatever came? What parts of this long, gentle history resonate most softly in your own heart? And where might Seneca's patient example invite you to walk a little more mindfully on your own path? This peaceful morning with Seneca draws tenderly to its close, but stay tuned for more kind and gentle stories from history in our next gathering. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so we can meet again soon. Thank you for sharing this long, heartfelt walk together, and until next time, rest well. What might we uncover together if we extended our peaceful morning walk with Seneca even further, letting the path wind gently through sun-dappled groves and open meadows, giving space for every chapter of his long life to breathe and unfold in its full, unhurried beauty? Imagine lingering first in the vibrant world of his childhood home in picture, a lively household filled with the voices of his older brother, his younger brother Mela, and the wise, steady presence of his mother. How do you suppose growing up as the middle son in a family of ambition and intellect shaped his gentle sensitivity, making him both observant and eager to understand the deeper currents beneath words and actions? Might those evenings listening to his father, Seneca the Elder, read aloud from collections of famous speeches have awakened in the boy a quiet dream of using words not just to win arguments, but to heal hearts and guide souls? As we continue along the path, feel the excitement of his arrival in Rome as a small child, perhaps holding his aunt's hand tightly amid the overwhelming clamor of the great city. How might those first glimpses of marble temples, crowded forums, and endless streams of people have stirred both wonder and a touch of homesickness, teaching him early that change, though daunting, often opens doors to unexpected growth? Pause with me to consider his years of intense study under philosophers like. And can you sense how immersing himself in Stoic teachings about living according to nature, controlling one's judgments, and finding joy in virtue alone gave a frail young man an inner armor stronger than any physical health? And when he briefly adopted a vegetarian diet out of respect for Pythagorean ideas, only to set it aside at his father's gentle urging, might that small compromise have been his first lesson in balancing personal ideals with family harmony and social realities? Let the path carry us next to the warm, healing banks of the Nile in Egypt, where a man in his 20s sought relief from relentless breathing troubles. How might watching the river's patient, life-giving flood each year, surrounded by ancient temples that had stood for, have quietly deepened his trust in nature's rhythms and his acceptance that human lives, though brief, can still be meaningful and full? Returning to Rome renewed, stepping boldly into public life as a quaestor and rising orator, picture the thrill of delivering speeches that moved senators and earned admiration, yet also drew the dangerous jealousy of Caligula. How close he came to death, spared only because the emperor reportedly said, "He's so ill he'll die soon anyway." Could that chilling moment have planted an even stronger resolve to live each day as if it might be his last, making every choice matter more? When sudden exile struck in 41 CE, compounded by the fresh sorrow of losing his infant son. Imagine the long sea voyage to rocky Corsica, the stark silence after years of Roman bustle. Yet in that enforced solitude, writing tender consolations to his mother, studying the island's geology and skis, composing early versions of dialogues on anger and providence. How might those 8 years, though painful, have become the quiet forge where his philosophy grew deepest and most personal? As fortune turned once more with his recall in 49 CE, stepping into the extraordinary role of tutor to the 12-year-old Nero, can you feel the genuine hope he carried in those early years, working alongside to guide a young emperor toward justice, clemency, and restraint? Might the relative peace and reform of the Golden Quinquennium have felt like living proof that wisdom could indeed temper power? Yet as the years passed and shadows lengthened, Nero's growing indulgences, the poisoning of, the terrible matricide of defended in Seneca's carefully crafted words, the accumulation of vast wealth that clashed with his teachings. How do you imagine he wrestled nightly with those tender tensions, pouring his honest struggles into essays on the happy life, tranquility, and the proper use of time? When died and influence slipped away, attempts to retire gently refused, might his gradual withdrawal into study, correspondence, and reflection have been a quiet return to the inner freedom he first discovered in exile, choosing peace of mind over position? And finally, when the conspiracy unraveled and Nero's order came, picture the calm gathering of friends and family, the deliberate ritual of opening veins, the final dictation of thoughts, the steam bath to ease the slow departure, his loving wish to join him. How might that serene, composed ending, emulating Socrates yet deeply his own, have been the fullest expression of everything he had gently practiced, meeting fate not with fear but with gratitude, reason, and an open heart? As our long, heartfelt walk together reaches a natural resting place beneath a spreading oak, with the full arc of Seneca's rich, human life spread gently before us like a beautiful tapestry of light and shadow, what threads of his story touch your own journey most deeply? And where might his patient, lifelong pursuit of wisdom amid imperfection invite you to walk your path with a little more kindness toward yourself and curiosity about what each new day might teach? This long, peaceful morning with Seneca draws tenderly to its close, but stay tuned for more kind and gentle stories from history in our next gathering. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so we can meet again soon. Thank you for sharing this extended, heartfelt walk together, and until next time, rest well. What might we gently explore next if we let our peaceful walk with Seneca stretch even further? Perhaps now following a soft trail that leads to a quiet overlook where we can sit together on a sun-warmed stone bench, gazing out over rolling hills that remind us how one human life, though brief in the grand sweep of time, can touch so many others with ripples of kindness and wisdom. Imagine turning to him with a warm, curious heart and asking softly about the people who walked beside him most closely, his family, his friends, the students of his words. How do you suppose his mother's quiet strength and deep intellect shaped the tender way he wrote to her during exile, offering comfort that surely flowed back to heal his own loneliness? Might those letters reveal not just a son's devotion, but a gentle recognition that love across distance can keep hearts connected no matter what walls or seas separate us? And if we lingered on thoughts of his brothers, the kind proconsul who later met in, and Mela the father of the brilliant but doomed poet Lucan, could their shared childhood laughter and later varied paths remind us how family ties weave through joy and sorrow alike, teaching that we grow not in isolation, but in the gentle give and take of loving others through their triumphs and trials? Picture asking him about his devoted second wife who chose to open her own veins beside him in that final hour. Might he speak with quiet gratitude of how her steadfast presence showed him daily that true partnership is a shared journey of the soul, where one person's courage can steady another's heart in the tenderest and most difficult moments? When the conversation drifts to friendships, perhaps he would smile warmly remembering the younger procurator in Sicily to whom he sent those intimate moral letters. How do you imagine writing those 124 epistles felt like sitting together in spirit, sharing small daily insights about living wisely, forgiving oneself for stumbles, and finding joy in ordinary days. Could such open, honest correspondence have been his gentle way of saying that friendship at its best is two souls encouraging each other toward greater light? And what of the many others who sought advice on tranquility? The grieving offered consolation, even the powerful consoled with careful hope. Might these varied connections show us that Seneca's heart reached out widely, offering whatever wisdom or kindness he had, reminding us that we too can be quiet sources of comfort to those whose paths cross ours, however briefly. As we sit together in this peaceful overlook, with a soft breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers and the distant call of birds, might we feel the gentle truth that Seneca's life was made richer, deeper, and more beautiful not by wealth or position, but by the loving relationships he nurtured through every season: childhood, ambition, exile, power, withdrawal, and peaceful ending. What relationships in your own life, family, friends, or even quiet connections through words across time, feel like gentle gifts that steady your heart and invite you to grow kinder and wiser day by day? This long, heartfelt morning with Seneca drifts softly toward its resting place, but stay tuned for more kind and gentle stories from history in our next gathering. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so we can meet again soon. Thank you for sharing this extended, peaceful time together. And until next time, rest well, carrying the warmth of loving connections close in your heart. What might gently stir in your heart if we allowed our peaceful time with Seneca to flow onward? Perhaps now wandering slowly toward a serene olive grove where the ancient trees stand like quiet witnesses to centuries of human stories, their silver leaves whispering in the soft breeze as we continue to trace the tender threads of his life and legacy. Imagine pausing beneath one of those sturdy branches and asking our kind companion about the writings that poured from his soul during those long Corsican years. Those consolations too. How do you suppose crafting words of comfort for others in grief became his own gentle medicine, helping him transform personal sorrow into shared wisdom that could ease lonely hearts across time and distance? And if we lingered on his moral letters too, those 124 intimate conversations sent like quiet gifts to a faraway friend, might reading them feel like overhearing two dear companions speaking softly about everyday choices: how to rise with purpose, how to dine with moderation, how to face criticism without bitterness, how to treasure time as our most precious possession. Could those letters invite us to wonder whether the truest philosophy lives not in grand systems, but in small, daily practices of kindness toward ourselves and others? Picture asking him about his tragedies, Medea, Phaedra, Thyestes, filled with raging passions and inescapable fate. How might writing such intense dramas have served as a safe harbor for exploring the storms he warned against in calmer prose, reminding us gently that art can show us what becomes of unchecked anger or desire, perhaps more vividly than any direct lesson ever could? When the talk turns to his natural questions, that loving inquiry into comets, earthquakes, winds, and the Nile's sacred flood, might he smile warmly and share how gazing at nature's vast mysteries always brought him back to humility and wonder, teaching that we are small yet connected parts of something beautifully ordered? How do you imagine contemplating the stars or the sea helped steady his heart through exile, power, wealth, and withdrawal alike? And as we walk deeper into the grove, with sunlight filtering through leaves in golden patterns, might we reflect together on how Seneca's words traveled far beyond his lifetime, preserved by medieval monks, cherished by Renaissance thinkers, quoted by and even touching early Christian hearts who saw in his emphasis on conscience and inner freedom a kindred spirit? Could this quiet endurance of his gentle voice across centuries show us that ideas rooted in honest humanity have a way of finding those who need them, long after the writer has gone? What writings or gentle voices from the past have found their way to you in moments when you needed encouragement or clarity? And how might they, like Seneca's letters, feel like quiet conversations with wise friends reaching across time to walk beside you? This long, peaceful morning with Seneca drifts tenderly onward, carrying its soft light into the afternoon. Stay tuned for more kind and gentle stories from history in our next gathering. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so we can meet again soon. Thank you for sharing this extended, heartfelt time together. And until next time, rest well, letting these gentle questions settle quietly in your heart. What might gently unfold in our hearts if we let this peaceful time with Seneca flow onward still further? Perhaps now finding a soft spot beneath the olive trees where we can rest together on a woven mat, listening to the quiet rustle of leaves overhead as we continue to explore the many quiet gifts his life and words have left for us. Imagine turning to him with a warm, wondering smile and asking softly about the way he viewed time itself. How, in his letter on the shortness of life, he urged us not to see life as brief, but to recognize how much of it we let slip away through distraction, worry, or chasing things that don't truly nourish the soul. Could that gentle reminder have come from his own reflections during long days in exile or busy years at court, realizing that true length of life is measured not in years, but in how fully and mindfully we live each moment? And if we lingered on his thoughts about anger in those 3 careful books dedicated to his brother, might his vivid descriptions of anger as a kind of temporary madness, burning the person who holds it more than anyone else, have been born from watching the destructive tempers of emperors and senators, or perhaps from noticing the small flare-ups within his own heart? How do you suppose learning to pause, breathe, and choose reason over reaction became one of the kindest gifts he could offer both himself and others? Picture asking him about friendship once more, how he wrote that we should choose friends as carefully as books, ones who inspire us to be better, who offer honest reflection without flattery, who walk beside us with mutual care. Might those words reveal how deeply he valued the quiet company of souls and invite us to wonder, who in our own lives feels like that kind of gentle mirror, encouraging growth through simple presence and shared honesty? When the soft afternoon light filters through the branches, might we reflect together on his idea of gently imagining possible difficulties each evening, not to worry, but to prepare the heart so that nothing ever truly surprises or overwhelms us? How could such a quiet practice, done with kindness rather than fear, have helped him meet exile, loss, wealth, and even that final day with steady calm? And how might trying it ourselves soften life's unexpected turns into moments of graceful acceptance? And as we sit in this tranquil grove, surrounded by the patient wisdom of ancient trees that have weathered countless seasons, might we feel together that Seneca's greatest invitation was never to achieve perfection, but to keep turning toward wisdom with gentle persistence, forgiving our stumbles, celebrating small steps forward, and trusting that every day offers fresh chances to live more fully, love more openly, and rest more peacefully in whatever comes. What quiet practices or gentle ideas from Seneca's heart feel like they might fit softly into your own days, perhaps bringing a little more calm, kindness, or clarity to the moments ahead? This long, peaceful afternoon with Seneca drifts tenderly onward, like a gentle river carrying light. Stay tuned for more kind and gentle stories from history in our next gathering. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so we can meet again soon. Thank you for sharing this extended, heartfelt time together. And until next time, rest well, letting these soft questions settle quietly within you. What might gently arise in your heart if we allowed our long, peaceful time with Seneca to draw toward its tender close? Perhaps now walking slowly back through the olive grove as the sun begins its soft descent, painting the sky in warm hues of gold and rose, and we turn together toward the final, most serene moments of his life, those quiet hours that revealed the deepest fruit of all his gentle learning. Imagine standing beside him in spirit on that fateful day in 65 CE, in his peaceful villa outside Rome, when the centurion arrived with Nero's command. How do you suppose a man who had spent decades reflecting on mortality met such news, not with panic or bitterness, but with the calm composure of someone greeting an expected guest? Might gathering his closest friends and loved ones around him have been his quiet way of saying that even in ending, connection and kindness matter most? Picture the scene unfolding slowly, deliberately. Seneca consoling those who wept, reminding them gently that philosophy's true test comes in moments like this. When he and opened their veins together in shared devotion, and the blood flowed slowly due to age and restraint, how might turning to dictation of final thoughts, even as strength faded, have shown that the mind's freedom endures to the very last breath? And when poison proved ineffective, and he stepped into the warm steam bath to hasten the gentle release, could that final act of acceptance have been the most beautiful expression of everything he had quietly practiced, meeting fate not as an enemy, but as a natural part of life's rhythm? As the light fades softly around us on our imagined path, might we feel together that Seneca's ending was not tragic, but deeply peaceful, a life completing its circle with gratitude, dignity, and love intact. How do you imagine living with such daily awareness of life's impermanence might shape our own moments, inviting us to cherish each day, forgive quickly, speak kindly, and meet whatever comes with an open, trusting heart? And in this quiet closing of his story, might we sense the gentle truth that a well-lived life does not end in defeat, but in serene fulfillment, leaving behind not just words on scrolls, but a quiet light that still warms hearts across centuries, including ours tonight. What feelings or quiet insights stir in you as we reach this tender ending together? Perhaps a softer gratitude for your own days, a warmer appreciation for loved ones, or a gentle resolve to live with the same courageous openness Seneca showed to the very last. This long, peaceful journey with Seneca draws softly to its close, like a dear friend offering a final warm embrace before parting. Stay tuned for more kind and gentle stories from history in our next gathering. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so we can meet again soon. Thank you for sharing this extended, heartfelt time together. And until next time, rest well, carrying the quiet beauty of Seneca's ending gently in your heart. This mysterious journey ends here, but stay tuned for more untold stories in our next video.